In these exciting times of AI in healthcare, we probably need to stop and ask, is this legal? Technology is reshaping how we do a lot of professional services around the world. It's impacting the legal system, education, and of course, healthcare. Once the buzz wears off from all the hype, how do we go about understanding the legislative requirements and the legal implications of emerging technologies in healthcare for the vendors creating the technology and the providers using it? Well, with me today is Miklos Zorkoczy, a lawyer, lecturer and advocate for legal tech and health tech innovations, and he's based in Hungary. In this episode, we talk about the complexities of AI in healthcare and legal tech. How do you prepare for upcoming AI legislation in the EU? And the challenges and opportunities for healthcare providers to uncover unbiased data in this new legislative landscape. Collaboration starts with the conversation, Team Health Tech. Let's make it happen. This is Talking Health Tech with me, Peter Birch, featuring content and community about technology in healthcare. Miklos, how are you going?
Yes, fine.
Good to have you here. Very good. Better now I'm talking to you, buddy. So it's great to be able to find a mutually okay time on the world clock for us to speak, because I'm here in Sydney and you're all the way over in Hungary. Is that right?
Yeah, in the middle of Europe.
Yeah, right. And so before we dive into some of these discussion points, because we just spent half the time talking about it all then, because it's great to connect with you and learn about what's happening in health and regulation and legal and everything else and commercialization in Europe. But for those that don't know you, Miklos, or maybe they're not in the THT Plus community and haven't seen your post there, introduce yourself. Tell us what you do.
Just before we start, I like THT community very much. It's a so open community, so you must join if you are not a member.
You're always welcome to come back on the podcast if you start with a plug to join the community. So that's a great way to start.
So back to me, I'm a lawyer. I'm working in Europe and I support legal tech and health tech innovations and developments. I learned some Python coding just to have a better understanding how AI design should be ethic and trustworthy. I do lecturing in a legal tech skill center in a Hungarian-based university. I mentor legal tech and health tech projects in a startup academy, also in Hungary. So it's basically about me.
Yeah. And so, that's interesting. It's interesting speaking to people that you can tell the type of person someone is when they're like that inquisitive, hands-on type person, when they're trying to learn about a particular area, so they become professionally proficient at it. Like you wanted to learn about AI and the technology side, so you learn Python coding. So, but tell me a bit more about that specifically. What got you so interested about really kind of diving into that particular area? Because there's a lot of stuff you could cover, on the legal side.
Yeah, absolutely. AI is international. So wherever in the world you work, you are now a subject to AI, and also you need to deal with AI problems. And if you are a lawyer in Hungary and working in a specific jurisdiction, you still have international problems with AI tools, and especially in medical devices and also in legal tech tools. So it's very common. It's very popular. You can do work anywhere in the world with these AI and tech problems and legal aspects.
I was going to say, actually, you brought up a good point in that I'm not connected closely to it, but that whole point of AI and legal tech raises really interesting. Is it challenges? Is it opportunities? What's the whole conversational AI and the speed in which that kind of stuff is entering the legal space? How's that having an impact?
Yeah. So the first problem is we don't have a definition by the law. So how do you treat AI if you don't have a single definition for it? But there is a draft regulation in the pipeline in the EU. So, EU, first we do legislation and then get some experience how it works in real life. But, it could be applicable within 18 months after the adoption of it, and it will have a definition finally. And it says that an AI system is a software, which is good, that is developed by a technique of machine learning approaches. Again, something about the tech, including wide variety of deep learning or logic or knowledge-based approaches, expert systems or statistical approaches, and can generate outputs under human-based objectives to make content, predictions, recommendations, decisions influencing the environments they interact with. So, how to comply with the AI Act, and how to export, for example, an AI solution from your country that meets all the requirements. So, if you want to export the solution to the EU first, there are community laws of the EU to comply with, like as you know, the General Data Protection Regulation, which was established 5 years ago. At least we have Data Protection Act, and it was the first in the world.
This is GDPR, right?
It was the GDPR, yes.
Yeah.
So back to the AI. Secondly, there are laws of the member states to comply with the local law. So within the EU, there are 27 different local law. Local jurisdiction, which is not easy to comply with. But on the level of EU law, if you get a certificate like a CE certificate, then you can do commercial activity in the single European market. So you need first to comply with the EU law, then to the local law, and then you can roll out your activity around the European market.
I want to come back to the CE thing in a second and commercializing in Europe, because that's an interesting conversation in itself. Coming back to the AI and this AI law, AI legislation. It's within Europe. It sounds like it's a pretty all-encompassing thing that's addressing areas of risk, and I imagine healthcare is one of those areas of risk that would be have implications by this legislation.
Yeah, this AI Act will treat as a high risk activity. The healthcare activity will be treated as a high risk activity. But what does it mean? If a medical solution is treated as a high risk activity, you need to have a risk management system, and it should be implemented and maintained within the system. You need to do training, you need to have a validation and testing data sets, which shall have appropriate data governance practices. You need to have technical documentation, which is obvious. Everywhere around the world, you need documentation, but it shall be drawn up before the system is placed, and you need to submit it to authorities. It shall be designed to record events automatically, login files, everything must be recorded. Just in case of trouble, you need to be accountable. Under the meaning of transparency, the user must be informed on the details of the provider and the system. A human-machine interface tool must be developed to have an appropriate human oversight to minimize risk to health, safety, and fundamental rights. And also, you need to comply with the cybersecurity requirements. The providers shall have a quality management system. A conformity assessment shall be made before the registration made by the authority. And also, you need to report all the incidents that you have to the authority. So the good news is that there will be an AI regulatory sandboxes for those startuppers and startups who want to have a controlled environment for the facilities of the development and the testing and validation of innovative AI system before their placement on the market. So in this way, EU and the legislation will help startuppers to entry to the market, which is very very hard because you need data for this. AI is data and algorithms, which and as a result of it, you will have a software. But in healthcare, it's very very hard to get to data, proper data, quality data.
Yeah, and distributed or non-biased, as well is a real issue. That's an interesting point that you raised, that it's a good opportunity it creates an opportunity for startups, and it's not often that you hear about additional regulation or anything that creates more of an opportunity for startups, as opposed to creating more kind of costs and barriers and delays and everything. So perhaps by having definitions and a structure and resources available, it makes it less of a wild west, and it creates more of a structure and gives some trust to the whole process as well, I imagine.
Absolutely. And from my member state's perspective, so in Hungary, we have a national e-health infrastructure, and this is a single system. All the healthcare data, even if it's a government hospital or if it's a private sector hospital, it's recorded in one single e-healthcare system. So it could be a huge advantage over other member states or even larger countries which are divided into regions or smaller provider and bankroller units. As a national health insurance fund and as a national e-health infrastructure, the national public health care are in one data management and data governance. So if you need data as a startupper, you can just join one single system, and then it's
interesting.
They are very happy if they have solutions to improve the healthcare activity.
And if I think a little bit strategically, or look ahead and think about the global implications of this regulation and legislation and things coming through, you touched on GDPR really quickly, and that one, it's for anyone in Europe. However, as an organization from outside of Europe, even in Australia, where we're not bound necessarily by GDPR for data in Australia, that's just, we have our own rules. A lot of organizations, even if they have plans, eventually, they're not even in Europe now, but they have plans to move into Europe, they'll make sure they're compliant with GDPR. And you hear about organizations in the US, they're like, well, we may as well be GDPR because, it's a globalized world and people jump onto our website from anywhere in Europe, or they expect that legislation's going to go that way anyway in the US because, it already has happened with GDPR. So the reason I bring that up is that there could be a similar kind of trend too, is that the world might end up following and see the lessons learned out of this kind of structure that's being created at a very large institutional level around AI, and potentially be something that's rolled out in other countries too.
Absolutely. So imagine that this GDPR has a principle that the data process must be transparent. But without having such AI act, there are the data control and there is a data process. So it needs to be transparent. But what does transparency mean? So is it a kind of accountability? Or what should we do with this transparency principle according to the AI? So I would say that transparency means that an expert is able to translate, let's say, interpret from the input and output data what happens between the two endpoints and why it comes to this conclusion. So is there any legislation that demonstrates what makes a code interpretable? Would an algorithm become transparent if the code was published? Is ethical design simply the economic interest of the developer, or just to build trust in his product? So these are questions after questions. We have, the current law you need to comply with, and we will see what happens when this forthcoming AI law will be in place. It has very, very similar principles like transparency, accountability, explainability. So this is not new for us.
Yeah.
But, we will see how it works in practice.
Interesting to watch. And then I think, as an organization from outside of Australia, if I was, say, a medical device manufacturer and I was looking at entering into Europe, I've seen it around the traps. There's the importance of the CE mark. Is that so for organizations that go into Europe? They need to be. Is it certified CE? What's that about?
Yeah, this is a certificate you need to get before any commercial activity, and it's given by an authority, and it's recorded.
So any commercial activity at all, not like not a medical device thing. It's basically any activity.
Yeah. And once you have this certificate, it's free to go to the EU market. You need a local authorization, of course, and in such medical devices, you need to register your product into a EU registry called EUDAMED, for European medical devices. But first, it starts with the local authority to get the license, and then you can go out.
And when you say local, that's like in that particular country?
Yeah, in one country.
Yeah.
Within the EU.
Got you. And so, thinking about then the future or where you're spending some of your time, whether it's with clients or with your within your lectures or what in the activities you're performing on a day to day, what are you seeing are the common questions, uncertainties, or the excitement around all of these changes? What's in the wings? Where do you see this kind of going, and what does the future look like?
Yeah, the key is still the data, how to get to the data. So in some other countries, they believe that data is a common asset and not the individual's right to be protected. In EU, we protect data. And in Western countries, mostly the data are protected by the law. Even you can do some commercials, even you can sell it. But if you are sick, if you are a patient, you want to be cured, and you can sell your data if you want it to. But this must be free and up to your decision, up to your consent. By the law, we protect data, and therefore it's very, very hard for a startup company, for example, to get to the data. And it's very, very important that the data is without bias.
Yes.
Bias could be if there are not enough patients in the database to learn for a machine. It could be a database could be biased if there are just certain types of local communities and not for worldwide communities, because it will be it will not be trained in a proper way.
Yes.
So the key is the data, how to get to the data, to train a system. So this is the key question, I think, around the world.
Around the world, right? It's an interest. It's funny how we have this conversation on opposite sides of the world, and in the end, quite often it comes back to the data. It's a challenge that we're all facing. So, look, Miklos, I love that we're able to make the time to have a chat on the podcast, and we should definitely do it again soon. And perhaps it's when this law comes into being around the corner or in full effect, and I'm sure there are many within the broader Talking Health Tech audience, or of course in the THT Plus community that would be interested to speak more. So we'll put your details in the show notes of this episode, and I'm sure others will be in touch, and look forward to continuing the conversations within the community soon. Thanks so much.
I always like to speak to any of you. You are very open, and I like it very much to share honestly your experiences, of course, keeping the confidentiality. But, this is a very good community. I like to speak to anytime.
Love it. Thanks, Miklos.
For more content and community about technology and healthcare, visit talkinghealthtech.com.